If you've been watching the news lately, I'm sure, and unless you've been living in a box, which I realize that many Americans, in fact, do live in boxes, and that's not what this is about today, is people are living in boxes. It's about people who sometimes live in boxes. Uh, the big thing has been the NRA, because we've had some recent gun violence that has been just horrific by nature. And stuff like that always really bothers me a lot, because there's no need for it, and both sides make a lot of arguments and there's a lot of vitriol about it. But and I'm not saying that I agree with both sides on any particular side of the issue, you know, but what bothers me is what the NRA does. Now, I'm fine with guns. I really am. I'm from a Midwestern state. I have hunted upland birds. I've hunted ducks. I've hunted geese. I've shot some rabbits, some squirrels, and I missed a number of deer. Not that I didn't try, but I did miss. I also served in the United States Navy onboard aircraft carrier. I'm a Vietnam era veteran, so I have shot a number of weapons back then, Colt 45s. I've shot a number of handguns since. I've known people who were on the police force. I've had the opportunity to shoot a couple of handguns. Didn't have a problem with it at all. They were all 9-shot magazines. Seemed to be sufficient to do anything you really needed to do, unless you were planning on invading a neighborhood, which most people really don't need to do. I've also seen what an assault weapon can do. I'm quite cognizant that given the right number of shells and the proper environment and the proper mindset, you can do a tremendous amount of damage, and significantly, it is something that is used for warfare. It was designed for warfare. It was not designed to be sitting in your basement in your gun closet next to your Beretta over under or your Sig 9. No, it was designed to be in a foot locker for a soldier in the United States Army, United States Marines, United States Navy, Air Force, whatever branch of the service it was. It's meant for war. But I understand the collectability, and I realize that, listen, thank God for North Dakota, right? There's places out in North Dakota you can launch a shot a mile and you won't hit a damn thing except a wheat field. So I also understand the arguments to people in regions where an assault weapon is something that, for whatever reason, is sport. Now, what sport it is, I don't know. You can't shoot anything with it. The shells just eat up all the good meat. And Lord knows if you ever did hit a deer, which I didn't, you would probably say to yourself, wow, I certainly tore up a lot of meat there. But, sometimes, you have to take a look at the big picture and, use a smaller shell. Leaves more meat to be eaten. And I prefer to eat versus, like clean out all the cartilage and everything else that got ripped up. But then again, I also understand that, and I worked in a school district in actually Massachusetts, where we had school liaison officers that were on duty police officers dressed like teachers, shirt, tie, and they carried a firearm. And they were a member of the staff. They were trained with that weapon. They knew exactly. They were police. They understood how to put themselves in a position to protect all lives. I mean, no question that they knew what they were doing. And it was very comfortable. I don't think I'd be very comfortable if the vice principal got one and then went to a gun course and said, okay, now I know. It's not the training necessary to carry a handgun in an area where children are, period. You have to have someone who is trained specifically by a police force or the military to be in a situation like that, not, taking an NRA safety course. And we'll get to the NRA. That's what this whole thing's about anyway. We will get to the NRA. Trust me, NRA fans, we will get to the NRA. And I also understand that the violence in video games, safe to say I have a very close person to me who is the head of commonsensemedia.org. His name is Jim Steyer, and he is an advocate of tighter controls on these video games. They are so violent now that, if your child is under the age of 18 and under any kind of medication ever, at any age, you probably shouldn't be watching some of this stuff. Some of it is just incredible. I know of a child in the neighborhood who's 7 years old, and his parent is a little, out there, and this parent has no problem with the child playing Black Ops. Well, the child's 7, and that type of stuff is absolutely, as an educator, I have a master's degree. I spent 20 years in public schools, Job Corps centers, teaching some of the kids from some of the worst neighborhoods on the East Coast. There's just, no child should be seeing those types of things. It affects the brain. I mean, I'm not a psychiatrist, I'm not a psychologist, but I know just enough to be dangerous. And I think I honestly believe that's a huge problem. So I can see both sides of the issue. What I don't like is the NRA's methods, the National Rifle Association. Now, I decided to do some research because one of the nice things about being a historian is you're smart enough before you shoot your mouth off. Excuse me, please listen to me, all the pundits on both sides of the aisle. And it really pointed at people like Beck and Hannity. Let me just do an aside here on Sean Hannity of Fox News. He comes off as this smart intellectual, etc. Whatever he likes to think he is. It's a portrayal. It's an act. It's Clark Gable. It's Tom Cruise. It's an act, folks. The man has 2 years of college. He has no more credibility on anything after 2 years. And listen, I don't wish to diminish anybody who's got 2 years of college. But to come on the news and speak as if you have some type of knowledge base. And this, just out of curiosity, I read a couple of his books. I went and looked at his sources, his notes. If you go out and find the proper media and the proper sources, you can prove any point, no matter how ridiculous and asinine it is. So, Mr. Sean, if you decide to ever have me on your show, and I'm sure you do not have that kind of guts, bring any topic you want. Really, I mean, seriously. I am dead serious. I say, please, Mr. Hannity, call me. Let me know what's going on, pal, because I would love to debate you on any topic. Please, sir. Bring that 2 years of a college I've never heard in upstate New York. Bring it to the table. Bring all of that crud, subversive crap you throw into your books. Please, sir. I beg of you. Anyway, let's get back to the NRA. I believe they are a domestic terrorist organization, period. And here are some of my reasons why, okay? First off, terrorism is used... Oh, before I say that, look, just so we can set this straight with all of my friends on both sides of the aisle, I'm going to... When you watch the NRA, the first thing they do is they pump you full of this crud about the right to keep and bear firearms, okay? If you edit anything, you can get anything you want out of it. Lord knows, if you look at the Bible, folks, you can write anything you want. When I was a pothead back in college, I remember the National Organization of Reform of Marijuana Laws found a passage in the Bible and said, God will give you all the seeds and herbs. Boom, seeds, herb, boom, we're in. Marijuana, we're cool. We're doing God's work. And then we hit another joint. Anyway, I digress. What the Second Amendment really says. I'm going to read it to you, okay? And then I'm going to throw you my exclusion on it, and then I'm going to move on and then have you all just go absolutely bizarro. Now, it doesn't really say the right to keep and bear firearms. This is what it says, okay? This is exactly what it says. By the way, I always keep my handy-dandy U.S. Constitution right next to me everywhere I go, just so I can remind all of my friends that some of that crap you believed in back then doesn't exist anymore, because this, in fact, is a living document. Means it is subject to amendments. Thank you very much. A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Well, there you go. See, the problem that the NRA has not mentioned is a well-regulated militia. Well, we don't have a militia anymore. We have the United States Army, we have the United States Navy, we have the United States Marine Corps, where a former student of mine is a lieutenant colonel. We have the United States Air Force, we have the Coast Guard, we have the National Guard. So we have all of these well-regulated armed services. We don't need for a militia anymore. Therefore, ruling the rest of it kind of null and void. Now, we understand the hunting. I understand the hunting aspects. I understand the sport aspects. What I don't understand is why the vitriol against background checks. All I'm saying is if you buy a gun from anybody in the United States of America, bring it into this country, those of you who love to protect our borders, yeah, let's hear it for the 3,000 mile fence down in Mexico. That should stop the Mexicans. You must think, excuse me, if you study history, all of you who believe in that fence, go read about the Maginot Line in France. See how the Nazis blitzkrieg took that thing out of the deal in about a minute. But again, don't let history get involved with all of your non-reality TV. Oh God, sometimes I lose my track. Anyway, and I just did, folks. Congratulations, Professor Farr. You just lost track. I've heard that from my students a number of times, but don't worry, folks. I'll get it back in a minute. So the NRA goes out and practices this carpet bombing, and 80%, and again, these numbers are all arguable because depending on which side of the news media you watch, anywhere between 95% and 80% of the American people would like sensible gun laws. Things like background checks. I just want to listen, if you haven't committed a felony, and if you're not some subversive who's planning on blowing us up, I have no problem with you buying a gun. I would just like to make sure that you're not, taking like lots of weird meds that I can't pronounce, and you don't have a lot of criminal acts in your background. If you go to a gun show, fine, buy a firearm. Let's just do a background check, make sure you're not nuts. It's not a big deal. Why should it be a big deal? They keep coming and saying, well, only criminals will get steel guns. Well, okay, fine. Fine. We just want to make sure we're all clean, okay? It's real simple. No one's asking anything. You might have to wait 24 hours, but if you need a gun within 24 hours, you must be under fire. And trust me, I've known a couple of guys who were in Vietnam, and trust me, if you're under fire, you're already screwed. You're already screwed. You better move fast. Okay, the other thing is, what do you need 30 shots for? I've talked to a number of guys, former students of mine who were in the armed services. The art, trying to be able to throw off take 3 10-round clips and try to slam them through in the time it does to do 30. It's real art. Be able to spit out 30 proves absolutely nothing. What it does is it carves up. You know what it's really good at? If you have a 30 magazine clip, you can carve up a room of first graders in seconds. You can terrorize a movie theater in minutes if you have the proper weaponry. Is that really, is it that important to have this? And do not believe that NRA crap. No one wants to take away your guns. Keep your stupid guns. I have a gun. It's locked. It's broken down. It's wrapped in oilcloths. And when I go hunting, I take it out, clean it up, put it back together, and go miss. Come on, people. Think about it. This is, it's sensible gun control. I heard the argument made by somebody said, well, I'm doing it to protect my home. Dude, if you need a 30 magazine clip and an AR-15 Bushmaster, I would suggest to you, having taught in some of the toughest neighborhoods in America, move to a better neighborhood. If you can't find someone to buy your home, then abandon your home and sue somebody. God forbid we have enough lawyers out there that are willing to whore themselves for any reason. Lord knows that seems like a good enough reason for at least a couple of whores to come out of the woodwork. So please, I ask of you, move. Then you won't need 30. You only need 10. Most suburban neighborhoods are, they're large enough lots that usually you can keep the spread down and have enough time to reload. It's not that close, confined areas like inner cities. You know, the NRA pours in millions and millions of dollars buying politicians. And if we know anything about Washington, D.C. over the last 5 years, 8 years, 10 years, it's their complete inability to get anything reasonable done. They've gotten us into 2 unprosecutable wars, and for the first time in the United States history, we're not paid for by taxes. They actually cut taxes while they were going to war. This is anathema to stupidity. I mean, why would you even think of something that stupid? Because no one ever read a goddamn history book. That's one of the problems. Now, the NRA goes out and carpet bombs. And I would like to read to you what terrorism is, the noun. The use of violence and intimidation in the pursuit of political aims. You want AR-15s. You want to give poor mothers in poor neighborhoods shotguns with limited training to protect themselves against the people who steal guns from the so-called good gun owners so they can have open warfare in the streets. Sounds a little like an intimidation to me. Certainly, we have a saying out in the Midwest, if it looks like a duck, it quacks like a duck, it flies like a duck, must be a duck. Well, guess what? Certainly looks like intimidation to me. What they're doing is they're creating a sense of fear in these neighborhoods. They're creating a sense of fear amongst gun owners that anybody wants to take their right to keep and bear arms away. They don't. What they want to do is have better control of it to make sure, listen, if one life is saved, then it worked. Period. It worked. If we get stop one person from buying a gun that could have killed, that had a record, if we can stop one person from, instead of carving up 21 first graders, ends up carving up 6 in a McDonald's because he had to reload, and some NRA member who absolutely believes in sensible gun control wraps the guy up, pounds the crap out of him, and calls 911. Remember, he's got 30 shots. Maybe that guy doesn't get up. You think about it. So the NRA is out there intimidating for pursuit of political aims. They control the landscape. They control who can keep and bear firearms. This isn't about protecting your rights. It's by protecting their pocketbook. This gun control legislation and their fear tactics have actually increased their membership. They've actually increased their membership. They're advertising broad gun holsters, pink guns. They're trying to make it palatable for children, for God's sakes. They're trying to increase guns in American society. We are the most violent society, civilized. Yeah, there are third world countries where they've gone completely nuts. We're not a third world country. We're an industrialized nation. We are allegedly the most powerful nation on the planet. Do we act like it? Not the NRA. Take a look at what terror means. A state of intense fear. People are afraid of guns. People are afraid of the NRA. Politicians are terrified of them because if they take away their funding, they may lose. And they know they need that money. Oh, they'll trip and dance around to do whatever they have to do. But the sad thing is, this has become a regional issue. And instead of looking at it regionally and finding a way to get over it, the NRA just carpet bombs you with, it's going to hurt everybody. And don't give me this argument, all this violence only happens in inner cities. Okay? Newtown Square is not the inner city. Okay? My wife is from Enfield, Connecticut. Trust me, I've been to Newtown Square. Ain't in the inner city. I have been to Aurora, Colorado. It is not the inner city. Let's get it straight, people. Let's get it straight, NRA. You're a terrorist organization. And you don't have the guts to admit it. You got that Wayne LaPierre who's a bobbling head. He's your pit viper. Well, you know what, Wayne? If you're their pit viper, then I'm our pit viper. Okay, one that inspires fear, scourge. A frightening aspect. By the way, this is from Merriam-Webster's, and I also checked Oxford's. All of them are pretty much in agreement on all of these things. So if you want to argue it, you're arguing with authority. And my own authority. And again, I don't believe any of them have any master's degrees, so I'm not going to really worry about that. And if they're lawyers, well, I believe I called lawyers whores earlier. Well, I'm going to stand by that because I always did like Shakespeare, even though reading him is kind of a pain in the ass. He's really hard to read. Cause of anxiety. There you go. Politicians without money. That's anxiety. Appalling person or thing, especially a brat. A brat. The NRA, they're like the little bully in the corner on your playground. You know, he's the one guy that everybody wants to go punch in the snoot. But because he's got this big bruiser behind him, i.e. guns, assault weapons with 30 magazine clips behind him, and they think, well, okay, I got you. We'll see about that. Violent, destructive acts committed by groups in order to intimidate the population of government into granting their demands. Are you kidding me? This is what the NRA is about. They are domestic terrorism. As bad as what happened in the Boston Marathon. Okay, 3 people died. Scores were hurt, maimed. It was a horrific act. It was not even arguably an act of terrorism. Just as much as the NRA's act of terrorism is. And I am dead serious when I say that. I look at you right in the eyes, and I invite any comments from anybody. There's more on everything later. Thank you very much.